The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. Smoke hung heavy in the sky, turning the sun into a dull, angry orange. Soldiers wiped the sweat from their faces, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling crawling over them. They had fought many battles before, but today felt different. Something was coming, something no one could stop. Then the ground shook. At first, it was small, just a tremor. The soldiers looked around nervously. Then it grew stronger. Trees bent, rocks cracked, and the ground split. Dust rose in thick clouds, hiding the horizon. From the mist, a shadow emerged. It was huge. Bigger than any tank, bigger than any building. Its legs crushed the earth beneath it. Its arms were long and covered with jagged metal claws. Its eyes glowed like molten fire, scanning the battlefield. Every step it took sent soldiers flying, and every roar shook the hearts of the bravest warriors. The commanders tried to stay calm, but their voices trembled as they shouted orders. Hold the line. Don't let it reach the city. Tanks rolled forward, lasers fired, but the monster barely flinched. Bullets bounced off its thick armor. Missiles exploded against its chest, leaving only small scratches. Nothing could stop it. Soldiers screamed as it tore through their ranks. One by one, men fell, swept away by its massive hands. Horses and war machines were nothing against it. Every army tactic failed. Retreat was impossible, and victory seemed like a distant dream. In the chaos, a small figure moved quietly. A human, ordinary in every way. He was not armored like the soldiers, not trained like the elite fighters. Yet, he walked steadily, his eyes fixed on the monster. Around him, people ran and hid, but he did not. Something inside him was calm, almost fearless. The soldiers noticed him and shouted, "Run! You can't fight that thing!" But he ignored them. He had a plan, though no one could see it yet. The monster's roar echoed across the valley, and the human stayed still. He watched, waiting, studying every movement. The monster raised its massive arms and slammed the ground. A wave of force sent everyone flying. Trees were uprooted, rocks shattered, and the air itself seemed to break. The human struggled to stand, but the monster's shadow moved closer. Its eyes glowed brighter, as if sensing the tiny human standing in front of it. Then it lunged. The ground shook under its weight, and dust filled the air. Soldiers screamed, throwing themselves to the ground to survive. The human did not flinch. He rolled to the side, barely avoiding the monster's crushing claws. His heart pounded, but his mind was sharp. Around him, the battlefield was chaos. Tanks exploded. Soldiers cried out. Alien weapons fired in all directions, but the monster ignored them. Its attention was on one target, whatever dared to challenge it. And the human moved closer, step by careful step, like a predator stalking its prey. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The monster paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. It sniffed the air, sensing the courage or foolishness of this lone human. The soldiers watched in disbelief. How could one man stand against a creature designed to destroy entire armies? The human picked up a fallen weapon, a simple metal rod from a destroyed tank. He did not aim it like a gun, he held it like a spear, ready to strike at the right moment. The monster roared again, a sound that shook the mountains and split the air. It lifted one massive claw and brought it down toward him. The human rolled again, narrowly avoiding the strike. He ran under the monster's arm, moving faster than anyone thought possible. Sparks flew as his metal rod scraped against the monster's armor. It growled, confused and enraged. How could this tiny creature hurt it? Around them, soldiers stopped fighting. They could not believe what they were seeing. One human, small and fragile-looking, stood against the impossible. The monster's massive body twisted, trying to crush him, but the human kept moving, dodging, striking. The commanders whispered to each other. "It's impossible." That human, but they could not finish their sentence. They were too afraid, too shocked. The battlefield was no longer about armies, weapons, or strategy. It was about one human, and a monster that no one could beat, except maybe him. The human jumped onto a fallen boulder, narrowly avoiding another swing. He stared into the monster's glowing eyes, unafraid. His hands tightened around the metal rod. Around him, the world seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stopped. For the first time, the soldiers dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this human could do the impossible. The monster roared again, louder this time, shaking the battlefield like an earthquake. And the human smiled. Not with fear, but with determination. He was ready. The battlefield lay in ruin. Smoke and fire twisted into the sky, turning the sun into a dull red disk. Soldiers trembled, hiding behind broken tanks and shattered walls. Many had thought the monster unstoppable. Many had thought the day was lost. But then, one human stood tall amidst the chaos. He was not a soldier of legend, nor a warrior trained for war. His uniform was torn, his hands blooded. Yet his eyes burned with a strange, fierce calm. Around him, other humans and soldiers stared, mouths open in disbelief. How could one man face a creature that had just crushed entire armies? The monster turned toward him. Its glowing eyes locked onto the human, scanning for weakness. Its massive chest heaved as it growled, a sound that rattled the bones of everyone nearby. The ground trembled beneath each step it took, and dust swirled around its enormous frame. "Run!" shouted a nearby soldier. "It will kill you!" The human did not run. He held a broken spear in his hands, simple metal sharpened at the end. His fingers were wrapped tightly around it, and his knuckles were white. He did not fear the beast. In fact, he welcomed it. There was a strange confidence in his movements, a quiet power that drew the eyes of everyone around him. The alien commanders were stunned. They had studied humans for years, thinking them weak and fragile. Their armies had laughed at Earth's defenders. But now, they saw something entirely different. One human dared to face the monster alone. And he was moving closer. The monster lunged. Its claws slashed through the air, tearing through trees and steel alike. Soldiers dove for cover, hearts racing, but the human rolled under the strike, narrowly avoiding death. He moved with surprising speed, agile and aware, striking with his metal rod at the monster's armored leg. A loud clang echoed as the rod scraped against hard metal, but it left a visible dent. The monster's eyes blazed brighter, filled with rage. It swung again, more carefully this time, tracking the human's every move. Each blow shook the earth, each step created waves of destruction. Yet, the human danced around it, barely touching the ground, striking where he could. The battlefield became silent, except for the clash of the human's rod against the monster's armor and the occasional roar of the beast. Soldiers held their breath. Aliens stopped their attacks, unsure whether to intervene. They watched as one small human challenged what seemed unbeatable. For a moment, it looked as if the human might be crushed. The monster raised its massive arms high and brought them down with full force. The human rolled to the side just in time. The claws smashed the ground, sending dirt and debris flying, but he was unharmed. He scrambled to his feet and darted forward again. Then, something remarkable happened. The human landed a solid hit on the monster's knee, a precise strike that made it stumble slightly. Sparks flew from the armor, and the beast roared louder than ever. It had never felt such resistance. It had never been struck by something so small, so fragile. Yet the blow had power. It was enough to make even the monster hesitate. The human did not stop. He darted around the creature, striking weak spots, hitting joints, claws, and armored plates where no weapon had ever touched. Each movement was careful, deliberate, almost like a dance. Every strike brought hope to the watching humans and fear to the alien army. The monster roared, swinging wildly now, furious at being challenged. It crushed trees, smashed tanks, and sent soldiers flying with each blow. Yet the human kept moving. He was fast, clever, unrelenting. And with every dodge and strike, he became more than just a man, he became a symbol of defiance. Some soldiers whispered to each other, hardly believing what they saw. Is he really going to fight it alone? Others simply stared, paralyzed by fear and awe. The battlefield had shifted. No longer was it about armies and weapons. It was about one human and one monster, a battle that would decide the fate of many. The human paused for a moment, catching his breath. He looked at the monster with calm, steady eyes. Around him, the battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind slowed. Everyone knew this was only the beginning. The monster was not defeated yet. But now, hope had appeared. One human, small but fierce, had dared to stand. The monster bellowed, its roar echoing across the valley. Dust and debris swirled around its enormous body. And the human tightened his grip on the metal rod. He was ready. The real fight was about to begin. The battlefield was chaos. Smoke and fire twisted into the sky. Tanks lay in pieces, soldiers crouched behind debris, and the ground itself seemed broken by the monster's every step. Yet in the center of it all, the human stood tall. His metal rod glinted in the red light of the burning battlefield. The monster's glowing eyes locked on him. It had crushed countless armies before, and now it was faced with a single human. For the first time, the monster hesitated. Its claws swung down with deadly force, but the human rolled to the side, narrowly escaping. Sparks flew as his rod scraped against metal armor. The sound echoed across the battlefield. The soldiers watching from the distance gasped. He's actually hitting it," one whispered. Others shook their heads, unable to believe what they were seeing. A human, small and fragile, was striking the beast and leaving marks. The monster growled, furious. It stomped, breaking trees and sending boulders rolling. It swung its massive arms, trying to crush him. But the human was faster. He ducked under one arm, rolled past another, and jabbed his rod into the beast's leg. The monster howled in pain. Around the battlefield, alien soldiers paused. Their weapons fired but did little. They had never seen anything like this. The human moved with careful precision, striking at weak points, dodging attacks, and never giving the monster a chance to recover. Each strike was small, but together they began to slow the beast down. The human's heart pounded, but he focused on each movement. His training, instinct, and courage guided him. He knew one wrong move could end his life instantly. The monster's arms swung like wrecking machines, crushing the earth, but he dodged, rolled, and struck again. The ground trembled with each blow of the monster. Soldiers were thrown to the ground, tanks crushed, and explosions shook the air. Yet the human never stopped. He ran up the side of a broken wall, leapt onto a boulder, and landed a sharp strike to the monster's knee. Sparks flew. The monster roared, stumbling slightly. For a moment, the battlefield went quiet. Everyone stared in disbelief. The human had landed a real strike, the first anyone had ever seen. The monster's glowing eyes narrowed, focusing all its rage on this one tiny human. The human backed up, breathing heavily. He observed the monster carefully, watching its movements, noting its speed and power. Each swing of its claws, each stomp, each roar gave him clues. He understood that raw strength alone would not win the battle. He needed strategy, precision, and courage. Then he struck again. He jabbed his rod into a joint in the monster's leg, twisting and pulling. The monster bellowed in pain, swinging wildly. Trees shattered. Rocks flew. Tanks exploded. But the human continued. He moved like a shadow, striking and dodging, never staying in one place too long. The soldiers watching whispered in awe. How is he doing this? One alien commander shouted in anger, "Stop him! He's just one human." But no weapon could reach him. The human had learned to use the battlefield to his advantage. He moved behind debris, through broken walls, over shattered tanks, striking where the monster could not hit. The monster's growls grew louder, more furious. Its attacks became reckless. Its massive arms smashed into the ground, creating cracks and splinters. It swung wildly, trying to catch the human, but the human was always just out of reach. Each strike he made was precise, calculated, and damaging. For the first time, hope appeared on the battlefield. Soldiers dared to peek out from cover, watching this tiny human take on what seemed impossible. Even the alien armies whispered among themselves, shocked and frightened. The human's courage and skill had changed everything. The monster paused for a moment, breathing heavily, trying to regain control. The human's eyes burned with determination. He had seen the beast stumble, he had seen its weak points, and now he was ready for the next phase. This was only the beginning. The first strike had been made, and the monster would not easily forget it. The battlefield was silent except for the roars of the wounded beast and the heavy breathing of the human. Soldiers, allies, and enemies alike knew one truth: this human was no ordinary fighter. He was something more. Something powerful. And the monster, the weapon built to destroy entire armies, was about to learn that strength alone could not defeat courage, speed, and intelligence. The human raised his rod again. Sparks flew from a nearby wreckage. Dust filled the air, and he ran toward the beast, ready to strike once more. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The battlefield was littered with shattered tanks, broken trees, and the bodies of soldiers who had fallen trying to survive the monster's wrath. The human stood in the center, rod in hand, breathing heavily but unbroken. Around him, the world seemed frozen in fear. The monster's glowing eyes locked onto the human. Its roar shook the mountains and echoed across the valley. Every soldier and alien froze. The beast had never been challenged like this before. One human had dared to strike it, and it had hurt him. For the first time, Anger overtook the monster's calculated destruction. Now, it was furious. With a deafening roar, the monster lunged. The ground quaked beneath its massive feet. Its claws slammed into the earth, creating craters and sending rocks flying in all directions. Trees snapped like twigs. Tanks exploded from the force of its attacks. The human rolled, narrowly avoiding the claws, dust and debris hitting his face. He scrambled to his feet and darted toward cover, a broken wall of stone and metal. Behind it, he paused to catch his breath. Sparks and smoke rose from where the monster had smashed the ground. His heart pounded, but his mind remained sharp. He had survived its first assault. Now, he had to plan his next move carefully. The monster swung again, this time more aggressively. Its massive arms cut through the air, smashing walls and vehicles. It roared, a sound so loud that soldiers covered their ears. The human dodged under one swing and vaulted over a pile of rubble, landing a sharp strike on the beast's leg. Sparks flew. The monster bellowed in pain, but its fury only grew. The human could see the monster's pattern now. It attacked with raw power, swinging its arms in wide arcs and stomping the ground to crush everything in its path. But it was slower than it looked. Every swing left a momentary opening. And that was the human's chance. The battlefield was a chaotic dance of destruction. Soldiers watched from hiding spots, hearts in their throats, as the human moved like a shadow. He struck quickly, dodged faster, and kept the monster off balance. But the creature adapted quickly, turning and swinging with unpredictable force. One wrong move, and the human would be crushed instantly. The alien commanders watched in disbelief. "It's impossible," one shouted. "It cannot be done. One human cannot fight it alone." Yet the human kept going, striking at joints, twisting his rod into weak spots, and retreating before the monster could retaliate. Every hit left the beast slightly wounded, slightly slower, and increasingly enraged. The monster's retaliation grew more destructive. It slammed the ground repeatedly, sending shockwaves that knocked soldiers off their feet. It swung wildly, smashing tanks, trees, and walls in its path. Dust, sparks, and fire filled the air. The human ducked under a massive claw, rolling to the side just in time. His body was battered and bruised, but his spirit remained unbroken. For a moment, the human paused. He could feel the monster's fury radiating like heat. Its growls shook the ground beneath him. Around him, the battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Soldiers whispered in awe, unable to tear their eyes away. He's still alive," one muttered. "And he's fighting back." The human's eyes burned with determination. He had learned more about the monster in these few minutes than armies had in years. He could anticipate its moves, dodge its attacks, and strike where it was vulnerable. And now, he was ready for the next phase. He would no longer just react. He would attack with purpose. With a sudden burst of speed, the human ran toward the beast. It swung its massive arm to crush him, but he ducked under it and jabbed his rod into the monster's side. Sparks flew as metal scraped metal. The beast bellowed in pain, staggering for the first time. Its anger was now mixed with fear. One human had survived its strongest attacks, and had even wounded it. The soldiers around the battlefield gasped. The impossible was happening. One human, small and fragile, was standing against a monster built to destroy entire armies. And he was winning, slowly but surely. The monster's eyes glowed brighter, its body trembling with rage and pain. It swung faster, harder, and more unpredictably. The battlefield shook with every blow. But the human was ready. He had learned, adapted, and now he was about to strike back with even more precision. The dust and smoke swirled around them as the human took a deep breath, gripping his rod tightly. Sparks flew from the broken battlefield, fire danced across shattered tanks, and the monster roared louder than ever. But the human was calm, focused, determined. He was no longer just defending himself. He was preparing for the strike that could change everything. The monster roared again, raising its massive arms, and the human charged forward. The final clash of strength, skill, and courage was about to begin. The battlefield was a mess of fire, smoke, and shattered machines. The monster towered over everything, its massive body trembling with rage and pain. Its glowing eyes scanned for the human who dared to strike it again and again. Soldiers cowered behind wreckage, too afraid to move. Yet the human stood firm, his chest heaving, eyes sharp, and mind sharper than ever. He had studied the monster for minutes that felt like hours. Its swings, its steps, even its breathing, all of it revealed a pattern. Strength alone would not win the battle. To defeat a creature built to crush armies, he needed strategy, precision, timing, intelligence. The human moved carefully behind a broken wall, watching. He noticed the monster's legs, massive, armored, yet slightly slower when it shifted weight. Its arms were strong, yes, but predictable in their arcs. Its glowing eyes, which terrified the soldiers, blinked occasionally, revealing tiny gaps in its perception. A plan began to form in the human's mind. He would not rush blindly. He would strike where it was vulnerable, use the battlefield to his advantage, and tire the monster by making it overextend. Every step, every strike, would be calculated. He ran toward a pile of broken tanks, dodging the monster's furious swings. Sparks flew as claws hit metal around him. The monster roared, louder than thunder, and swung again. The human rolled under the swing, landing on a piece of debris, and jabbed his rod into a joint on the monster's leg. It bellowed in pain, stumbling slightly. Small, but crucial, progress. The soldiers whispered from hiding. "Look at him, his planning," one said. "His not just fighting. His thinking." They had never seen a human act like this before. The human was no ordinary soldier. He was a strategist, a fighter who understood that brains could beat brawn. The human continued to move, using the wreckage as cover. He climbed over broken walls, jumped from debris, and struck at the monster's legs and joints. Each hit was deliberate. He avoided direct confrontation with its massive claws, instead exploiting the weaknesses he had observed. The monster roared in frustration, swinging harder, faster, and with more rage, but it was tiring. Its movements became slower, its swings less precise. He noticed something else. The monster's energy came from its core, glowing beneath thick armor. If he could reach it, but that was impossible, at least directly. Yet he could manipulate it. Make it stumble, expose its side, and strike with full force. That was the key. The human darted forward, hitting a weak joint again. Sparks flew. The monster bellowed, swiping at him wildly. He dodged, rolled, and struck again. The monster's eyes narrowed, its body twisting with rage. It smashed the ground with both arms, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Soldiers were thrown off their feet. Tanks exploded. Fire danced across broken machines. Yet the human moved with precision, avoiding every attack. Then he did something unexpected. He baited the monster. He ran toward its left side, luring it into swinging recklessly. The monster fell for it, swinging with all its strength, but this time the human was ready. He rolled under the arm and jabbed his rod deep into the side, a place the monster could not reach. Sparks flew, and the beast stumbled heavily, a sound of pain mixed with fury echoing across the valley. Soldiers held their breath. Even the aliens were shocked. One human, using nothing but skill, courage, and intelligence, was outsmarting the creature built to crush armies. The human didn't pause. He observed the monster carefully, letting it overextend and tire itself more. Each move he made was a dance of attack and evasion, a careful balance of speed, strength, and cunning. Slowly, the tide of battle was turning. The monster, powerful and terrifying, was beginning to show cracks in its defense. And then the human saw the moment he had been waiting for. The monster shifted its weight, preparing for another heavy swing, leaving its side exposed for just a second. That was the opportunity. If he struck correctly, this could change everything. He clenched his rod, muscles tensed, and ran. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Smoke and fire swirled around him. Sparks flew from shattered metal. The monster roared, raising its massive arms high, unaware of the strike about to come. The human's eyes burned with focus. Strategy, skill, courage, everything he had learned and observed led to this moment. The first strike had been a warning. Now, the real plan was ready. The monster's retaliation had taught him much, but it had also revealed its greatest weakness. And the human was prepared to exploit it fully. The battlefield was a war zone of fire, smoke, and broken machines. The monster towered over everything, its massive body trembling with rage and exhaustion. Its glowing eyes scanned for the human who had dared to strike it again and again. Soldiers hid behind wreckage, hearts pounding, watching as the impossible unfolded. The human stood in the open, rod in hand, breathing steadily. He had studied the monster, learned its weaknesses, and planned every move. The first strikes had been warnings. The strategy had been revealed. Now, it was time for the final confrontation. The monster roared, a sound that shook the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. Its arms slammed into the earth, crushing everything in their path. Tanks exploded, rocks shattered, and the wind itself seemed to tremble. Yet the human did not flinch. His eyes burned with determination. He was ready. With a sudden burst of speed, the human ran toward the beast. He rolled under one massive arm, dodged a clawed strike, and jabbed his rod into a joint at the monster's leg. Sparks flew. The monster bellowed in pain, swinging wildly. Its fury was unmatched, yet its movements were slowing. It was tiring. Every strike had cost it strength. The human used the monster's momentum against it. He darted to the side, striking at exposed joints and weak points with precision. The monster roared, swinging again, but the human was always just out of reach. Each hit chipped away at the creature's armor, each strike weakening it further. Around the battlefield, soldiers watched in disbelief. He's really doing it, one whispered. The alien armies had stopped attacking, stunned by what one human could do. The monster, designed to destroy entire armies, was being outsmarted and worn down by a single human. The human climbed a pile of rubble and leapt onto the monster's massive leg. Holding his rod tightly, he drove it into the glowing joint beneath its armor. Sparks flew, and the monster howled in pain, stumbling heavily. It swung wildly, trying to crush him, but he dodged and struck again. Each movement was precise, each attack deliberate. The monster's roar grew louder, filled with rage and fear. It swung with all its remaining strength, smashing through trees and tanks. The earth quaked under its weight. Yet the human pressed on, striking the same weak points he had discovered. Slowly, methodically, he wore it down. The soldiers began to whisper, hope replacing fear. The human was winning. One man, ordinary yet extraordinary, was defeating the beast no army could stop. The monster's steps became slower, its swings less accurate, and its glowing eyes dimmed slightly with exhaustion. The human backed up, assessing the final opportunity. The monster raised its massive arms high for a crushing strike. This was the moment. Timing, strength, and courage all mattered. He took a deep breath, tightened his grip, and ran forward. He dodged under one arm, rolled behind the other, and leapt onto the monster's side. With every ounce of strength, he drove his rod deep into its glowing core. Sparks erupted, and the monster bellowed in pain and fury. Its massive body trembled, knees buckled, and it staggered. The human held on, striking again and again at the exposed joint. The monster's roars turned into cries of agony. Its massive arms flailed, knocking over rocks and debris, but it could no longer control its strength. Slowly, painfully, it began to collapse. The battlefield was silent, except for the crackling fire and the heavy breathing of the human. Soldiers peeked out from behind cover, unable to believe what they were witnessing. One man, small and ordinary, had defeated a monster designed to crush entire armies. Finally, with one last roar, the monster fell to the ground, shaking the earth. Its glowing eyes dimmed and went dark. Dust and smoke filled the air. Silence followed, a silence that spoke louder than any roar. The human stood over the fallen beast, rod in hand, chest heaving, victorious. The alien armies could not believe it. Humans, weak and underestimated, had just proven their strength. The soldiers on the battlefield looked at the human with awe. He had done the impossible. He had defeated what no army could. And as he stood there, the fire of courage in his eyes, everyone realized a truth they could never forget: humans were not weak. Humans were clever, strong, and unstoppable when they dared to fight. The human took a deep breath, looking at the battlefield around him. The war was far from over, but this battle was won. And from this moment on, the legend of one human defeating a monster built to destroy armies would spread across the lands, inspiring awe, fear, and respect in equal measure. The monster was defeated. The human had emerged victorious. And the world would never see humans the same way again. The battlefield lay in ruin. Smoke rose from shattered tanks, broken trees, and scorched earth. Silence replaced the chaos, broken only by the crackling of fire and distant moans of injured soldiers. The monster that had crushed armies now lay motionless, its glowing eyes dark, its massive body broken. The human stood tall amidst the destruction, rod in hand, breathing heavily but unbroken. Around him, soldiers stared in awe. They could hardly believe what they had witnessed. One man, ordinary in every way, had defeated a beast built to destroy entire armies. The impossible had become reality. Alien soldiers looked on in shock and fear. Their commanders whispered among themselves, unable to comprehend how a single human could overcome their most powerful weapon. One of them muttered, This changes everything." The idea of humans as weak, fragile creatures had been shattered. The human looked around at the battlefield. Friends and foes alike had fallen. He saw the devastation caused by the monster's rampage. Yet in that destruction, hope was born. Humans were no longer just survivors, they were warriors capable of defying the impossible. Soldiers approached cautiously, offering nods of respect. No words could describe the courage they had witnessed. They had seen one human face death itself and prevail. His actions had changed the perception of humans forever. Stories would be told of this day. Soldiers would speak in hushed tones about the human who stood against a monster that armies feared. Aliens would recount the tale in their halls, shaking with disbelief and respect. The legend of the human would grow, spreading across galaxies, inspiring awe and fear. The human did not boast. He did not celebrate loudly. He simply stood, watching the horizon, knowing that the battle had been won but the war was far from over. His courage, skill, and intelligence had changed the course of history. One human had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. In the distance, other humans and survivors gathered, their eyes wide with admiration. Some whispered, "Did you see that? He defeated it all by himself." Others nodded silently, understanding that today, humans had proven something vital. They were stronger, smarter, and braver than anyone had believed. Even the alien armies, once confident and mocking, now reconsidered. Humans were no longer a species to underestimate. Their bravery and ingenuity had turned the tide of battle. From myths and stories, humans were becoming legends. The human walked among the ruins, checking on allies and survivors. He offered nods and words of encouragement. Courage, after all, was not only about defeating a monster, it was about inspiring others to believe that they could do the impossible. Over time, the tale of this battle spread across worlds. Alien civilizations whispered about the human who had faced a weapon designed to crush entire armies and had won. They called him a myth, a legend, a creature of impossible courage. Stories painted him as more than human, yet he remained one among many, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in action. The battlefield slowly cleared. Smoke faded into the sky, and the sun shone through the haze. Humans began rebuilding, stronger and wiser than before. The monster's body remained as a reminder of what had been faced and conquered. Its presence became a monument to human courage and determination. The human looked out over the battlefield one last time. His journey had changed everything. Not just the battle, but the perception of his entire species. From that day on, humans were no longer myths. They were legends. And the legend had begun with one human, standing alone, against a monster built to crush armies, and winning. As the sun set over the ruins, the wind carried whispers of courage, hope, and defiance. Across the galaxy, beings would remember this day. A single human had faced the impossible, defeated the undefeatable, and inspired all who witnessed it. The monster was gone, but the legend of the human would live forever. The battle was over. Humanity had emerged not as prey, not as weaklings, but as legends. And the story of the human who defied a monster built to crush armies would be told for generations to come. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke had cleared, leaving scorched earth and broken machines as evidence of the monstrous battle that had just occurred. The human stood tall, rod in hand, his uniform torn and blooded, yet his eyes burned with calm determination. Around him, survivors, human and alien alike, looked in awe. The monster lay defeated, a colossus that had crushed armies, now nothing more than a shadow of its former terror. Yet the human did not feel victory as an ending. He knew this was only the beginning. Today, one man had changed the perception of humans forever. Tomorrow, the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. From the distance, alien commanders gathered. They whispered nervously among themselves. Their most powerful weapon had failed, bested by a single human. The myths they had told themselves about humans being weak and fragile were gone. Now, humans were a species to fear, to respect, and to never underestimate again. The human walked among the ruins, helping the wounded and encouraging survivors. He gave no grand speech, no heroic claim. His courage had spoken louder than words. Every soldier who had witnessed his feats carried the story in their hearts. Every alien who had doubted humanity now reconsidered. News of the battle spread quickly. Across worlds, beings whispered about the human who had faced the impossible and survived. Legends were born. Some called him a myth, others a hero, and some simply a force of nature that defied explanation. Humans were no longer the species to mock. They were a warning, a mystery, and a rising power in the galaxy. The human looked toward the horizon, where the sun rose over the smoldering battlefield. Thoughts filled his mind. He knew that monsters like this were not the only threats waiting in the galaxy. Bigger, deadlier creatures might come, stronger than anything seen before. But he also knew that humanity had changed. One human had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome the impossible. Across the battlefield, human soldiers began cleaning up, rebuilding, and learning from the events of the day. They shared stories of the human who had dared to challenge a monster alone. The younger ones listened with wide eyes, inspired. They would carry this courage forward, preparing for the battles yet to come. Alien civilizations also began to take note. Reports circulated in their empires. One human had defeated a weapon designed to annihilate armies. They had underestimated humans for centuries, but now respect and fear was necessary. Whispers spread. Humans were no longer prey. Humans were legends in the making. The human paused, holding his rod tightly. He gazed at the fallen monster, its massive body a reminder of the challenge he had faced and overcome. He smiled faintly, knowing that this was only the first step. Humanity had survived what no army could. Humanity had risen where others had fallen. And the galaxy would remember it. He turned toward the surviving humans and nodded. A quiet understanding passed among them. This victory was not just his. It belonged to all who had fought, hidden, and survived. It was proof that courage and intelligence were as powerful as any weapon, perhaps more. As he walked away, leaving the battlefield behind, whispers followed him, among humans and aliens alike. The human, the one who defeated the monster, he is no myth. He is a legend. The sun rose higher, casting golden light over the ruined land. The smoke still lingered, but the world felt different now. The impossible had been accomplished, and humanity had proven its worth. And in the quiet moments, when the stars appeared in the night sky, creatures across the galaxy would remember that one human had faced a monster built to destroy armies, and had won. The legend would continue. For humans, the story was only beginning. The galaxy would soon learn that they were not weak. They were brave, clever, and unstoppable when the time came to fight. One human had changed the course of history, and the galaxy would never forget it.